We'll go ahead and call the work session to order, and I'll turn it over to Ms. Rafalowski.
Good afternoon, Board. This afternoon, we'll go ahead and get started with our work session agenda. The first thing on the agenda is we will be recognizing Chris Leisher at our regular scheduled meeting in lieu of the work that he has done at Bluff City Middle and Holston Valley Middle, those properties that he acquired, and I look forward to that. He will be actually bringing some slides to show us as well for those who haven't been able to visit those campuses to see actually what has happened to those two schools. The second thing I have this evening is I'm going to ask Mr. Hubbard to come to the podium here in just a minute. The first thing we're going to do is look at the modulars at Sullivan Central Middle School. We would like to put those on our list to dispose of and declare those surplus. And the second thing would be Bluff City Elementary parking lot, which has had some observation from several that we need to look at that as well. So the first thing I'm going to put on the screen are the modulars at Sullivan Central, and Charlie has made these pictures, and I'm going to let him talk you through those, and I'll start right here, Charlie.
Not very clear, I guess maybe the light. These are the two modular units that are to the front of the school, down in front of the annex. That's from the front. They were used as classrooms years ago, but they are no longer used. We've got a lot of furniture and desks and stuff like that in them. They're in pretty bad disrepair. Actually, we tried to sell those at Colonial Heights, if you remember, a few years ago, put them on gov deals, and we didn't even get a bid. Not to say that we will these either, but I did have an individual that contacted us about maybe getting them some group. So the only legal way to do it is to declare it surplus and then put it on gov deals. We'll see what happens. So these are the two that's in front. The next one, that is the lower one you see on the lower end, bushes growed up. The siding is just real bad on it. There's a bathroom in them, you know what I'm saying, and then of course there is a heat pump, but nothing. But we haven't used them in years. They're very unsightly on the property. We have no hour on them, you know, they're just there, but they're just getting in disrepair. That ramp is, if it was ever used again, would have to be redone. It's just basically an eyesore in front of that school is what it is. The next one, Evelyn, that shows the upper one. You can see the walkway of leaves and stuff on it. They're about 24 by 40, something like that. The classrooms are with glass wire. Next one, I think is the back. That's the back of them. You see there, you had to have egress, little deck off of it, but you can just see the discoloration of it, and the underpinning is rotten on it, and everything else. This one is behind the school. This was at one time used, I think, as is a classroom. Might be in just a little better shape, but it's still not in very good shape at all. It's deteriorated on the outside. That ramp is not very good either. Next one, I think it shows just an end view. That's just, you can see the discoloration of it and just how they've gone downhill. So they're not used, don't need to be used. They're pretty much disrepair. So we're just asking to declare those as surplus. I will take more pictures on the inside and measurements and more descriptions and try to get those posted on gov deals if that would be your all's wish to get those off site.
I would ask if the board has any questions of Mr. Hubbard in regard to these three modular units located at Sullivan Central Middle School.
I do have one. I know you probably hear me. Are they like trailers?
No, they're not like a double wide that you put together. No, those have to be disassembled. Okay, the walls are in panels.
Okay.
But you've got to take the roof and the trusses off, and that's the hindrance of it.
Okay.
You know, at Colonial Heights, we had 2 years ago that were like double wides that was on axles like mobile homes, and we got rid of those, but the others, those have to be taken apart in panels and stuff like that. And they were moved. the maintenance department moved those several times. They're not the easiest thing to move, but, they're not like a double wide mobile home that you can put an axle wheel under and take off from half of it, no.
I guess that was my question though, because I mean, I didn't think you could, I mean, you can put anything on gov deals, I imagine, but I mean, if it's something that you're gonna have to disassemble, basically to destroy, is there even a point to put it on gov deals? And if they don't, I mean, we're just gonna do the same thing, right?
Yeah, well, like I said, they moved them, the county's moved them before from site, school to school, that's where they
Okay.
were needed. So they
Okay.
can be moved, but it's a bigger chore basically than it is if they were under axles and like a double wide mobile home.
Okay. Yeah, thanks. I just didn't think if it was not something you could hook a trailer to and move, that it was even gov dealsable, so, okay.
But if you put them on gov deal and you get a low bid, even if it's,
Dollar.
even if it's a dollar bid, you can sell it for whatever,
Yes.
but we cannot give something away by state law. We have to,
Not really. It takes, you all have to pass a resolution to give it away or whatever, but
well, I don't think we can even give it away if.
no,
but,
because we tried to give those away at Colonial Heights and we didn't get any offers. I had a couple of people contacting me and I think we had a bid of $1 or something at one time on gov deals and then that person never followed up with it. And I told one gentleman, I said, well, we had it on for $1 and I said, I'll actually pay the $1 myself if you'll come and get them, and he didn't want them, so. That's been about 3 years ago at Colonial Heights,
Right.
so.
And if they don't sell, your plan is just to demolish?
Yeah, I hope to, and actually I got a cost for a company to come in and demolish those at Colonial Heights, which was not very cheap, but, you know, we didn't follow that thing, and if we don't sell, then I'll come back to the board with what we get as far as getting rid of them, okay?
I guess that actually is the other thing I wasn't thinking about. So if gov deals, we give it, even if it's for $1, then we don't have to destroy it. We don't have to pay the demolish or anything, so it does save money in that direction.
Yes, yeah, by legal, we have to put it on gov deals.
Okay.
We just can't give it to another.
Oh, I knew we
Okay.
won't give it away, I just, okay, thank you.
Any additional questions? All right, the next presentation is on the Bluff City Elementary parking lot. And I'm gonna ask Mr. Hubbard to take us through these slides as well.
Okay, in behind Bluff City Elementary, it's been an issue. You can see that dark spot in the middle. That's like a sunken place, that is water. I took those photos, maybe Monday of this week. Hadn't rained in several days and it still holds water. There is, from that white line to the right, there's probably a 2 and a 2.5 foot drop off. But it's so amazing, you can see where one of the cracks is in the pavement, right here close where I took the picture, and a couple other places. But as far as that, I doubt if that was ever actually level, because that pavement should have broke following that white line as far as the elevation. There's not a crack in it nowhere, Mr. Gilmore. That's the most elasticized pavement I've ever seen in my life, you know what I'm saying? Because it's not broken up hardly any, and that hole it's holding water.
It used to be level. I remember when
Okay.
it was level, yeah.
Several years ago, if you see that utility pole on the other side of the front of that vehicle, we went in and put a benchmark on that pole. And we would go about once a month and we drove nails in different spots of the parking lot. And we would go over with the transit and shoot grade on it. And at that point, it never did go down any. Now, back when I got the renovation money, I had the prior administration, the highway department, we looked at that and had a design of what to do, and then, of course, then my renovation got cut out, so that was dropped by the wayside, okay? So that is looking, I'm standing back toward the modular unit where the Head Start is. That's that way. I'll show you a few more that I took of, there it is, and you can see there's about a 2.5 foot drop right there. There's a few star marks where cars have drug going around that. That's where they drop off kindergarten, if I'm not mistaken. Everybody drops off there, okay? And they loop around and they've had to increase it wider and then there's a few factories, but, you know, after all these days, that water, I don't know if you go today, there'd be any water, it depends on whether it rained yesterday over there or not, but it's so funny that you see a line going with the line, but as far as crossways, which dropped, you would think there would be a big crack in the pavement. There's not.
What was the,
Like I
what was the proposed solution when you talked with?
I'll have a bigger thing here, I'll show you just
Okay.
in a minute about what we was looking at next one, please. there it is, that's just a little closer shot, and you see a crack sort of running off of the slope, but you would think as much as that's dropped, they would be one running, you know, in that line. Or it'd be such a crack it went over, there's not many cracks in it, I believe they used rubber instead of asphalt to put that in. Okay, next one. Now this is, I'm back over there looking back toward the modular unit, and you can see this one holds a little bit of water with that one, and where that car is about where they make the loop, with what it is. All right, next one. This was at that modular, this is what is a basketball court. You see this spot of leaves right there? That is a pretty big hole, that is not even usable. That yellow thing right there is where it goes up on that pole where elementary kids could shoot a basketball and it would send it back to them. There is a basketball going at far end that someone could probably shoot just half court and that, but as far as the kids, the students using that as a PE, no, it's not. It's nowhere near that shape. And way in the back there is a tennis court. That there's no poles for the net, and it's never been used as a tennis court as far as I know. Okay? There's the hole looking back, and you can see the dumpsters are way back in the middle, and a few cars parked on that tennis court back in the back there. I had a proposal, and I'll show you one, between the back basketball goal, there's about a 2-foot drop off and grassy area that is actually a drainage ditch. To the far left is a storm drain, and we looked at that, take all those fences out, and a man could put a diagonal parking about where that fence is, those cars down through there, and you could make a road that looped that whole out exterior of that parking lot, would relieve probably a little bit of traffic off of the street, and they could make a loop to come around, to drop students off, and then have double parking, about where this fence is in front of these cars right here, because, this tennis court is about 2 foot in elevation higher than back behind the basketball goal. So it would, all the fencing would have to come out, have to do a lot of regrading, and actually, Evan, I think the next one shows that drainage ditch. Yes, this is in the drainage ditch. Right in there is where a storm drain is, but if you look at it closely, this in here doesn't really drain that way. This might be a little bit lower than that. So that, and there's from here to here is probably about a 2-foot slope of how it comes down. It's not level, so that would have to be regraded and then it. And if you remember Miss Combs, apparently with her, she was a teacher there years and years ago. That at one time I'd heard that was like a sinkhole, that all kinds of stuff got thrown in it, and then they just went in and made a parking lot. That's probably why it is sunk in places, just because of the not as firm foundation. And once you dig in, I don't know what you would hit. You know what I'm saying? How strong it would be. Next one.
When you said that there's fences, you taking both sides of
Yes,
it?
that's just a straight fence. It just divides the parking lot from that basketball court.
But you're saying take on the fence on that side too?
Well, this right here out, that fence goes back again the back of the property line. Just take this front fence out.
Okay.
And be done with it, and you still leave the fence along the back of the perimeter of the property. Okay?
What would you do with that court?
You could probably remake it if you wanted to remake a court, you know what I'm saying, that someone could use it once, but I think the main thing that, most of the teachers there has to park at that church. Now, I know they don't have funerals like they used to, 2 o'clock in the afternoon, but that church ever utilized that church during the daytime. I don't know where the teachers would park at. They'd probably have to go over to middle school and park or something, the old middle school. I don't, you know.
So are you thinking about taking that entire area for parking? Because if you,
Well, no, just double up the sides, but still yet, you could still have the back end back here to where that tennis court is. You could make that a basketball, PE, where they could utilize it for PE.
because that line you see right there in front of the goal is a crack about.
Right there?
Yeah, right there.
Yeah.
That's a crack about this wide, and for several years, I filled it with tar every year, and it keeps
Yeah.
sinking down. And to give you a timeline, in 1997, that hole that you showed on the other end
Mhm.
was barely enough of a hole that a golf ball would sit in.
Okay.
And so that's how, over the years, I've kind of took pictures of it over the years. I play down there a lot, so
Is that-
I've watched that hill, yes.
Is that court used, that basketball?
Well, we used to, it's not used so much anymore, and it probably shouldn't be used, because that crack's wide enough now
Oh,
that somebody could probably turn an ankle. You know, it's getting worse and worse every year.
Yes.
You could probably turn an ankle in it now.
Yeah, it's, I don't think, it's not safe enough for students to use it during PE. I don't think it's that, it's not safe. And then Miss Nixon, they never used it for years, have they?
they've not used it much, no. The hole on there always scared me. You know, sometimes after school, some teenage boys will come in there and play. They always play on that one goal now because of that hole though.
I have seen in the summertime, there'll be a few of the neighborhood kids will be shooting ball there or after school, but not during the school day.
Is that something, I know we don't use it now, but is that something if we did it or repaired it that the school would use?
Yeah, I feel like if we did redo it, we would only have the diagonal parking, like I said, which is probably to these dumpsters. And this back end back here, you could still make it like, and I'd like to move those dumpsters, cause there's a lot of gravel that the caretakers has to roll their trash to those dumpsters. I'd like to put them up there right beside of that modular unit and make it a lot closer to the building, cause it's quite a ways from the building down to those dumpsters. And it would still give a way that they could come in and pick it up. Okay, and next, I think it shows okay, this is while school was going on, and you can see, I just took this one to give you the side of the elevation, and you can see how this vehicle's parked and the distance it is there, and they're sort of up on the, back wheels are up on that hump. But about where that bus is sitting, I could go, there's a grass area there, we could make a place to put the dumpsters there. And that truck could go straight in there, dump, and then back straight out, and it would relieve a lot of the gravel, because it's not easy rolling those big cars across that gravel. Okay? This is, I'm standing at the drainage looking back toward the dumpsters and back the other way, and there's the basketball goal right there in that court that we have. Okay? Here is the storm drain that I'm standing at, and it would have to be raised up and redone, but, so that's it on the park lot. Okay? Now this, if you're ever there, all the water on this street runs to this spot right here. And then it runs over the bank, and there's a playground down here. That washes quite a bit, even though it's probably on the city right of way or county or however it goes. It had washed out, it erodes quite a bit. And actually, we ourselves, I went and got a dump truck load of riprap last week and put in there just to help keep it from eroding out. The next picture will show you a little closer. That, you can see how it erodes out. And actually, down in this dip out from the playground is 2 sinkholes, because there's probably 3 acres of land. That whole hill, everything comes in there. We got one that's fenced off and one's not. Seems like all the neighbors wants to throw their grass clippings or their weeds or flower clippings in there and stops it up. But all the water in that area goes into that spot. When we had those torrential rains 2 years ago, all that rain, the benches down there on the playground that you can sit on were complete. They was probably 3 full foot of water. The playground stake. We actually rented some pumps from the fire department, and we pumped water for almost a week, night and day, to get that drained out, because it just wasn't going down. But that was back when we had a lot of rain a year or so ago. So I said we did do that, even though it might have fell upon the city or somebody to do it. But I just went ahead and got a load of riprap and done it ourselves, just to be sure about it. I think that's the last one. Okay. But if you so desire, I can get back with the highway. It would have to be a summer project, you know what I'm saying? So I could get an estimate on what it would run, how it could do. I don't know how much, you don't know what you're gonna hit once you dig that pavement up, how substantial, sturdy that soil will be, whether you're gonna take a lot out or, I have no clue, okay?
Will this require an engineer to,
Probably so. It would probably have to get an engineer to look at
so it would have to go out for bid?
Yes, yes.
So part of that's gonna have to be repair what's making it drop. So
But I
gotta
had
do
seen
that
it
first. I
go
mean,
down
it's
a lot,
gonna
but
be-
we've done a benchmark, and we didn't see a lot. But that's not to say that it's,
I mean, that's pretty significant. I
it
mean,
is.
wanna stop it
is,
before it
and
does
if you-
whatever.
And really, to see it with your own eyes and go over and look at it, it's not, I'm not gonna say worse, but it gives you a better detail of just how bad it is.
Almost looks like that person would come out and find their car gone sometime.
Yeah, well, I hope not.
Yeah, goodness.
I hope not.
Okay.
Anything else? Okay.
All right, if there's no other questions for Mr. Hubbard, then we'll move to item number 5, which is property updates.
I'm sorry, I guess I do have one. I'm still not 100% clear on what we're being asked to decide, or what the recommendation is.
There will be a recommendation at the next board meeting to engage a survey or architect to review this piece of property and see where we go from there.
Okay.
That will certainly be the first step in this. I don't think it's something we can go in and just say, oh, we're gonna repair this.
Yeah.
It's beyond that for us.
Yeah, that's all I wanted
Yes,
to
sir.
clarify.
Next is property updates with Mr. Hull.
Okay, well, I will start with, I don't know if this is good news or bad news, but we did have the bid opening to take bids for the Paperville school property. And it didn't take long to open the bids, we just got one, and it was for $2,001. So I guess I would classify that as disappointing. I don't think anybody's under any illusion that this is an extremely valuable piece of property. I did talk with Ms. Davis about what to do, and she's sort of, I think, looking at it from her end. The board can choose to accept that or not accept it. And I guess that will be on the agenda as to what to do. And if you want me to do anything in the meantime, I'll be glad to do that, but that's where that stands.
Did they have what they're gonna do with it? Or was that even part of?
That was not part of it. However, the person who did bid on it is the person who's been very interested in it, and he owns the adjoining property. So,
How large, is it 2.7 acres?
I believe that's correct, yeah. It's a fairly good-sized piece of property. It's rough and it's very rocky, so.
But this is property we didn't know we really owned until we had the phone call on it, right?
That's right.
So-
I think when we went down and listed everything, it shows up, but it hasn't had any attention in over 50 years, so. So,
Thanks for the
yes,
question.
it has just been sitting there.
To give you a little bit of history, Chairman Jones, when Valley Pike opened, the Paperville school closed. My mother went to school there. And it's up on a hill. There was no water on the property, so they carried a pail down over the hill, across Paperville Road, to a neighbor's spring, and a dipper, and got fresh water out of the spring and had a dipper of water as they chose. If they didn't want to drink out of the communal dipper, they could bring their own fruit jar. My mother has a scar from where some boy pushed her down at some point, broke her fruit jar as they were going down the hill. So there's a, as in all of our schools that have closed over the years, there's good memories there on that old hill as well, especially for my mom.
So why didn't you do it?
I actually thought about it, but I thought it was a conflict of
Oh,
interest,
okay.
and I really don't need it.
Do you remember what year Valley Pike was built? I've got it in that purpose study.
Just wanted to share that.
And it still has no water, right?
I haven't been out there, but I would assume not.
I don't think so. And as Ms. Rouse is saying, it borders Paperville Road, if you know where that is. But at this point, I would say you cannot access our property from Paperville Road
I would
unless
concur.
you're a rock climber.
I would concur.
Now, back in the day, that may have been different, or it may have been kids, but the only access is to go around the corner and go down a little dirt road.
Go out School Lane,
School Lane, right.
off of Old Jonesboro onto School Lane.
So it's not landlocked then?
It is not landlocked.
Okay, good.
Correct. Correct. I will talk with Ms. Davis some more, and kind of get her thinking about it, and, you know, but she didn't get much interest at all, and then just in one bid, so. I'll be able to give you a little more information, but y'all can think about it. If if you want me to talk to a real estate agent or something, we can do that, but I think whoever you talk to, they're gonna say there's not a whole lot you can do with this. Okay.
I say we take it and run.
Any more questions or historical reflections or anything else? Okay, on Bluntville school property, variety of people have looked carefully at the status of the title on that, and I think the unanimous conclusion is that there are not deeds or anything else to one part of that property. And so we don't panic, we definitely own it, but however we came to own that one portion there is foggy at best. Now, that calls into question, I guess, what we will want to do about that. We do have somebody, a title lawyer, who's gonna give us a title opinion on that and lay all that out for us, but in talking to him just this past week, he plans to have that in the near future. But I guess everybody's been trying to give plenty of time to see if somebody came up with something, but we have not. So, so we'll have that title opinion. We're also getting the appraisal, and he's sort of been waiting on the title opinion to finish that up. And so we should have all that complete in the very near future. And the Colonial Heights Middle School property, the same. We do have surveys on both of those schools. I have them here with me if you want to look at them. Or I've just got a few copies of this, but I wouldn't mind parting with one or two of them if you want to take one. But Colonial Heights is a lot less, difficult in regard to the survey and so forth. We will be getting that appraisal. I talked to him just a few days ago, so that will be forthcoming there. Then we'll sit down and try to ascertain what to do with those. And I think that's the updates on those. If you have any questions, I'll be glad to answer those.
That part of the Bluntville property that's in question, is that what was taken by eminent domain, or do you know for sure?
We do not know. It would make sense that it was, because there's no deed, but likewise, there's no record of any eminent domain. And I'll say, that's not unprecedented. And if you go back into these old school properties, and Paperville's an example, I'm not sure we've got a deed to it. We've got an old thing, and it's handwritten, so it's not the greatest either, but giving you an example, when we were working through the sale of North, I found out that when they came through with John B. Dennis, they didn't have any deeds showing where the right-of-ways were or anything, and so they just, I guess the assumption was the county owned it, so they would just pave what they wanted to pave, and, but there was no real definitive, boundary to the North High School property. It just sort of went out there to where John B. Dennis stopped, and so that's not all that unusual that it would be a lot of uncertainty with these things. We, in my opinion, and I think everybody else's, we definitely own all of these properties by eminent domain. We've been on them for years and years, and fenced them and kept them up and all that, so I don't think there's any questions about that. It might cause us a little bit of a headache getting everything straightened out, but it can be done. So it's just these old properties, that's what you run into. So that's all I have on the update.
I would like to get one of those copies from Colonial Heights. I mean, I don't have to get it from you now, we'll get it later on, but I would like to get one of those.
Might as well get it now as any time.
I'll do it.
Are there any other questions for Mr. Hull?
Is there a way that we could get those in PDF, just by email?
Yes,
Okay.
I was
To
thinking I
everybody?
sent those out. I've sent them around, but yes, I can do
Okay.
that.
Okay.
There you go.
Thank you very much, sir.
One little point of interest, and I guess many people know this, maybe not most people, but there's a walkthrough from the street in the back where students could walk through and come into the back of the property, and it's, I think, 40 feet wide, so it's just a little add-on there, and it has some restrictions on it, and so there's some questions about that, but, it's just another one of those little odds and ends that took place over the years, but I'm sure it kept a lot of students from having to walk all the way around and come in by the front road. And so I will send you copies of those. They're emailed, obviously they're small, but that you would have them to look at.
Any additional questions for Mr. Hull? The next item on your agenda, item number 6, is a proposed resolution for a traffic study at Sullivan East High School as prepared and presented by Principal Andy Hare. Mr. Hare is seeking approval from the Board of Education prior to this going forward at the Board of the County Commission. And in this resolution, he's asking for a traffic pattern study on Weaver Pike, which is a state route, and that's part of the reason that he is pursuing it in this manner. He is actually looking and hoping for a right-hand entrance lane to the school and also a traffic signal. And I will give you some time if you have a question about that or anything, but he is asking for the board to bless this, for him to take it to the county commission. He does have current sponsors, Randy Morrell, and co-sponsors for this resolution to be presented to the county commission.
Is there a cost involved with the study?
There, I feel sure at some point there will be a cost involved with the study, but that is why he is asking for the county commission to do the study and because it is a state route and not a county road.
Mr. Rafalowski, if I could add, there actually was a study done by the Tennessee Highway Department. When I was principal there, I requested that. I didn't go through the commission. I didn't know I was supposed to at that time, so I just called them because I was the one on Weaver Pike directing traffic every morning and every night, evening. There was a report. I have no idea if it's still at East High School, but there was actually a written report. I don't know if it was still there when Ms. Busk, was it still there when you were still there? They actually did a study for us, and I asked for a traffic light at that time. And at that time, they turned me down. I told them that if they just come and direct traffic with me at 7:15 in the morning, and at 2:30, I think they'd see it differently. But I would absolutely support Principal Hare's request, but there might be some information that he could find there at East that might be helpful as they go forward. But we did that, when was that, Angie? Probably 2002 or 3? 2001 or 2?
I am happy. I'll share that information with him and see if he can find it and see if he can make that request without having to go this route. But I'll certainly talk to him about that tomorrow.
And I'm sure with the middle school that might help and increase the possibilities of getting a traffic light. But anybody that has been at East High School at 7 o'clock in the morning or 2:30 in the afternoon, there's not a question to be had. There needs to be a traffic light. I mean, I even had a parent bring me a orange hunting vest and said, please, at least wear this if you're gonna be on the middle of Weaver Pike directing traffic. You scare me to death. It's just the only way to get the cars in and out. You just do what you have to do.
When I was at East for the ball game, a couple people brought it to my attention too. It's kind of related. As you come into the middle school, we got a turn lane coming from the other direction. But when you turn, some people said we need to look at the possibility of having a turn lane for the right turn. That traffic was backing up back to the curve some mornings. And I went up one morning to get a picture of that. It is backed up quite some distance at certain times. So that may be something we.
Are you talking about the middle school now?
Yes.
Okay.
Talking about the middle school now. So I think that there's certainly more traffic on that road now since the middle school's there.
All right, any other questions, comments?
I'm not sure if this is, again, this is probably not the appropriate way to go about it, so I'm asking you guys what we can do or how I should go about it. I think now that we're in the stages of, we've purchased the property, the Bishop property, we've got to, we're trying to figure out, there's a finite amount of money to do any kind of improvements in roads and things at Westridge. I would like to see us actually get a professional company to come out and say, these are the things that would get the biggest bang for your buck. Because I don't know if we really have, I mean, we're trying our best to say this is something that would relieve the road back to Henry Har. But when it starts looking at all of the hurdles that we're gonna have to go through with the impact study, oh my goodness, what am I trying to say? Environmental impact. It's gonna take a long time to get past some of those things. And it'd just be nice to have a company that knows that business to look into saying, maybe the road, if you come up Shipley Ferry and as soon as you go under the bridge, maybe that's the better entrance. Maybe the entrance to the front is a better entrance. Maybe you're building that road across. So before we jump too far into it and start spending too much money, I'd like to have that looked into. I don't know how expensive that would be, and that might be cost prohibitive, but I think when we're talking about spending several $1 million, for roads or entrance and exits, that it would be something we should now look at. So I don't think it really goes along with this traffic study, but it is a traffic study. So, again, there's no way to tie it into this, so I just don't know how to actually start something like that, or is it something I need to make it just another, proposal for, or what do I need to do on that?
It might be a good time for me to give you an update on where we stand on the access driveway onto Henry Har. I've met with the environmental people a couple of times already to talk about that. And we have the engineering firm right now designing the driveway into it to meet the needs of the environmental people. And there's a certain way you have to go in to do that to make sure you don't cross Russell Creek twice. There's a certain amount of road footage. So we are already into that study, and I think the study is about, I won't say $200,000. I've forgotten what the contract is, but I think it's in that neighborhood. And so the engineering firm's already doing that. That's AMT, and they're working on the plan to bring us up the back way. That will give us a second access into the school, and even though there's a need on the front entrance, Dr. Bishop property, that access driveway is critical to getting traffic in and out and giving them two options. Now, it will probably end up costing more to do the driveway because we've got to hold closer to the ridge, which is more rock. You can't, if you hold close to the left side, that's Russell Creek, and it's a blue line creek, which means that it has to meet certain standards. There's a couple of permits we have to get, but the engineering firm thinks they'll be ready to hopefully go to bid somewhere around January or February.
Okay.
That has to bid on plan to put the driveway in, which would, if that happens, and the bids come in good, and they come in a timely manner, we might be able to have the driveway completed by the time school starts next fall. That would be very desirable. There's no promises of that, but they are working hard to make sure that they meet all the environmental people, because they've got to approve it before we can actually do anything. And
That's a lot
environmentalists,
faster than I thought.
they won't necessarily approve the cheapest one. We've looked at 2 or 3 different alternatives, and they came up with this last one that's got a couple more curves in it than I would like, but it has to hold over next to the rock ledge there on the right-hand side if you're looking from Henry Har up toward the back of the school. So it's moving fairly quickly with all the hoops that we have to jump through. And
Good.
so,
I know there's a lot of hoops, I didn't know we were jumping through them yet, so that's good.
but we're already jumping through them. I went to Junction City and met with them there to talk about it. And then Marshall Bagley, who's also an environmentalist, came out and looked at the creek, and they have flagged it different places to see where the water flow is and things of that nature. And Deneen is working hard with I just lost his name, the one that's with AMT, Gordon, he'll come to me later.
Okay, that's fine. Okay. All right, thanks.
Easterly, I think. No, it's Easterly's brother-in-law. Coleman, Gordon Coleman,
Colby.
yeah. And, but he's easy to work with, and he's worked hard on some of the other projects. And about 2 weeks ago, he said we'd be ready to have a kind of a design preview of it in just hopefully a few more weeks.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else?
But that doesn't preclude asking for something, options on that front property.
Okay.
I mean,
All right, the next item on the agenda is the additional operational procedures as it pertains to the health and wellness of staff and students. As I go through this packet, I would ask that I've left some documents at your seat, if you'll follow along with me. The first one that I've given you that I'd like to talk about is the statistical sheets on our positive cases for staff and students, and also our attendance, our percentage attendance for students, and our number of staff that have been absent on the last 8 days. We started our COVID dashboard on Monday, August the 16th, 1 week into the school year. And this document has the statistics by day and by school. And we'll look at the first one there just to give you some information is Bluff City. I've listed the elementary schools first, then the middle schools, and then the high schools. If you look at Bluff City has a student population of 549 students. And I apologize, I don't have that column on this sheet. I'll get it on there though, but I wanted to point that out. And you can see that through the past 8 days, they have had one report of a positive case. The second line is the percentage of students that are absent. 13.6% on that first Monday, August the 16th, through yesterday, which was 10.5%, and the total there, the 12.7875 is an average of those 8 days. Generally speaking, the percent absent for a school ranges anywhere from 4 to 10, and 10 I would consider high in a normal academic run-of-the-mill school year. The next line is the number of staff absent. You can see that on the 16th we had 3 staff members absent. Could have been a personal leave, could have been a sick leave, could have been any number of reasons, but none of which we've noted here, for a total of, we have had 12 days taken by staff since the beginning of this document, which was the 16th. Now, you can see that Bluff City Elementary is by far one of our best locations right now and doing very, very well. As you move on down, you'll start seeing pink blocks. Anywhere you see a pink block means that we've had 10 or more positive cases. Now, these are cases that are getting reported several different ways. They're getting reported by the health department. They're getting reported by physicians' records, and they're also being reported as students or families are self-reporting. So those figures are coming in from 3 different avenues. When you get to Holston, Holston is one of our most difficult spots right now, having had, as you can see, 48 positive cases. They are having an attendance rate, and you can see on Monday the 16th, they started out at 5%, which is generally pretty good. But you can see how that has increased over the course of the last 8 days. And now their staff absent is a total of 37 days, and it went up higher today. Thursday's not on there.
So 20 today? I heard 20.
So that gives you some insight to what's happening in each one of our schools. We have different activity in different schools. It's not the same everywhere you go. We have schools that fall in the range of Bluff City and Central Heights, and we have schools that fall in the range of Holston and Miller Perry, Sullivan Heights, and West Ridge. So I wanted to provide you all with this information, and if you'll look at the very bottom of page 2 where it says district, this is just a cumulative total of all columns. And you can see that it's cumulative by date, and then we have the grand total over at the far right. So steady increases all the way across. The next document you have is just today's attendance, which should have the date 8/26/20 at the top. And you can see again what our totals look like by school. And I'm going to go back to Bluff City Elementary. Again, this is a school that has 1 positive case, but yet we're seeing 11.84% absent. we're questioning that attendance. Why are students not coming to school? And we're not only dealing with one illness in our school district. We do have COVID positives. We do have students who are being quarantined in COVID. And when I asked for that number today from the health department, I wasn't able to get that. I can't get an exact figure of students in quarantine because those quarantines are being issued from different places, from the health department, from physicians, and from those who are self-quarantining. So it's hard to get an exact number there.
Mr.
We were-
Rafalski, can I ask a question? I know that, again, pulling from my experience, when school starts, when school started 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, when school would start, it would seem that we would have a round of colds, we would have some stomach bugs and so forth. Has anything like that been reported? Are you aware of any of those things going on as well right now?
Yes, and that's the next piece I was going to mention. We were on a call yesterday, and another illness that was cited was RSV, that they were having a lot of that reported right now, a lot of allergy related, and then just the category of other. So, and then there are just those students who aren't attending school. So a lot of factors going in there, and it's hard to pin down some numbers. So you look at that, and you look at Bluff City, which again I think is Bluff City and Central Heights are two good ones to look at because they have so few positives, but yet they're showing a high absentee rate. So difficult to pinpoint exactly the reasons there for the attendance going down. Another one that's doing very well is Emmett. You can see that their percentage absent today was 8%. And then we go to the other extreme where we have Holston Elementary, again, our difficult situation that we have right now. We also have Miller Perry, Sullivan Heights, and again, we see some activity which is growing at Sullivan East Middle, Ketron, and West Ridge for attendance. Although at Ketron, the number of positives have not grown. But we are seeing significant increases in attendance. Our total attendance today, we showed that we were 20.37% absent. Our overall enrollment today was 8,639. And out of that 8,639, you can see that our total absent was 1,760. The next document in your packet is the Tennessee Department of Health document. And the first thing I would bring your attention to on that is at the very top of the first page, you can see there are 3 dates there. There's a date of 8/5/21, 8/13/21, and 8/25/21, and that shows you the dates that we're being given updates. And when I say an update, that means that the Tennessee Department of Health is changing their protocol. The most alarming piece to this for me is sometimes we get changes and we don't know that it's changed. And that was the case yesterday. We were on a call with the Commissioner of Education, who also had the Director of the Tennessee Department of Health, and there was no mention at all that there was a change coming, but yet there was a change made yesterday. So I just bring that to your attention because I think it's important that that you know that sometimes we don't know when things are changing until they've already changed and we find out. But the change on this document, as you can see at the top, actually is a change that will be noted on the last page. And it removes additional requirement for layered prevention strategies in K-12 indoor classroom settings in order to quarantine exemption to apply. So if you look at page 3 of 3 and you look at quarantine exemptions, you can see that what's happened there is they actually have removed the statement other K-12 school prevention strategies such as universal, and that is the key word here, and correct mask use, physical distancing, increased ventilation were in place in the K-12 school setting. That statement has been removed as of yesterday. So now our guidance from the Tennessee Department of Health, and this is the document that we follow as well as the Department of Health when making decisions in quarantine or isolation. Now, under quarantine exceptions, in the K-12 indoor classroom setting, the close contact definition excludes students who were within 3 to 6 feet of an infected student where both students were engaged in consistent and correct use of well-fitting face masks. The next document you have,
Even for a lawyer, that's a lot of exceptions. I still don't understand, what are you saying they removed? And is the highlighted blue portion still an exception if they're both wearing a mask?
it is. Before yesterday, there were 2 bullets there, and they removed the second bullet, which
The
was,
additional bullet that required actually having a protocol in place that kids all wear masks?
yes,
Did they give any reason for this?
nope. In
Any
fact,
science or data that they released with this?
in fact, as I said, we were on 2 different calls yesterday, and it was never mentioned. We didn't find out about it until this morning, and there's been quite a bit of chatter about it today on the superintendent's listserv in different areas. But this has been the document that we have
Right.
lived by,
Is
and
there, I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you,
it's
but
okay.
was there something new that, from the CDC that they're relying on, or any other public health that you're aware of?
Not that I'm aware of, and I would ask Diane by shaking your head yes or no, are you aware of anything? And her answer would be no.
This says that if both are wearing the mask, they do not quarantine. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And it used to require that you actually have mask protocols in place for that to apply, correct? And so they just are now saying as long as the 2 people have on a correctly fitting mask, then they don't have to quarantine.
I think it removed the 3 to 6 foot requirement also, according to this.
It removed the distance requirement. It also removed the universal requirement. And I'll read that second bullet again. Other K-12 school prevention strategies such as universal and correct mask use, physical distancing, increased ventilation were in place in the K-12 school setting. So you had 2 bullets that you actually had to check off. And now you don't. Now you only have the 1 bullet to say that you don't have to quarantine. All right, the next document that I have given you is the actual document where we had the additional operational procedures. And this was the document that I had presented you with and that you as a board approved at our August 5th, 2021 meeting. What you're seeing in this document tonight is red, and where the red lettering is where I am proposing changes. And you can move to number 5, where it says we will be open and transparent about our cases And we will post a daily case count on our system website, which we did start last Monday. We had previously been told that there would not be posting of COVID dashboards, but then they came back and said yes, so we were able to start doing that last Monday. And we're thankful to the health department for assisting us and providing us with the numbers that they had. Also have the Tennessee Department of Health, in conjunction with the Sullivan County Department of Health, will be responsible for contact tracing and making recommendations regarding isolation and quarantine. Again, I would just emphasize that the school department is not doing contact tracing. That is a task that the Department of Health is doing it. And lastly,
Ms. Ralph, can I ask a question there, just for clarification for myself? I just want to make sure that I understand. The Department of Health is doing all of that, and is that something that came down from the state, where the health department just said, hey, we're going to do that and take that off of you? And you explained that before, but just to make sure that it's correct in my head, will you just explain that again? How it went from us doing it last year to them doing it this year?
number one, the school department is not equipped to do that. We neither have the staffing or other tools to do that. That is a function of the health department. The health department, in conjunction with the Tennessee Department of Health, do make those calls when they have gone through that process. As of, I guess, this week, they have notified us that they are making one attempt to contact contacts. And that is, if they don't answer the phone, it might be via a text otherwise, but they're making one attempt. The other piece that I've added to number...
Can I follow up on that?
Yes, sir?
I understood the first part of the answer, and I don't disagree with you that it shouldn't be the school system's job to do that, but I would like clarification on what has changed, because we did it last year, and I know that we also had resources from the CDC in here because we couldn't use this boardroom for a year, and possibly even the National Guard. So my question is, given that our numbers are as bad as they were last year, what is our health department and the Department of Health doing to help? And as you know, I asked that they come to this meeting and answer these kinds of questions.
I can't, I'm sorry, Mr. Spivey, but I can't give you an answer on that one, other than they haven't asked to set up a center in this room yet. They did talk to us this week about starting a vaccination site at Bluntville Middle School. We're working hand in hand with them on that, and certainly happy to do whatever we need to for that. But as far as their staffing goes and what they're doing, I don't have an answer to that.
Can I ask just, on the number 6,
I'm not there yet.
oh, I thought you just did it. Just, I'm sorry.
Let's wait just one more minute, because I have one more line to add to number 5.
I think flip the page, yeah, well, we can't add anything.
The last one I'll add is on number 5 is the last sentence, and I guess that was an assumption on my part that we would be accepting doctor's notes, because we do accept medical notes, but there was some confusion. So I did come back and add that to this document, that we will also accept notes from a student's physician. We certainly would want to continue that and not question that. On page number 2 at the top,
Question.
yes,
On this, when the health department is doing the contact tracing, are they not having to contact our schools anyway to find out who's around, the ones that tested positive?
we provide the health department with rosters, also seating charts, and demographic information. We did talk yesterday about even the potential of providing some limited access to our software, but all three school districts in Sullivan County, Kingsport, Bristol, and Sullivan County are supplying the health department with that information to assist them.
And that's part of the new requirement that they reinstituted after the school year opened, that the Department of Health sent out to all the schools after they opened, right? And, I mean, that's the honest truth, isn't it? We didn't have the seating charts, we didn't have any of that, and then the Department of Health sent out that mandate after all the school years started, just about a week and a half ago, right?
And we are happy to comply.
Oh, I
to,
completely agree, I just,
the
I'm
part
not sure
that's,
where the
part
leadership
that's,
is.
you know, that we will do and, will, you know, as we can, update those for them and provide them with that information. On page 2 at the top, it says important links to information pertaining to COVID isolation and quarantine. You'll see that we have drawn a line through isolation and quarantine letters. That was, prior to yesterday, we had been advising our students to go to the Sullivan County Health Department site and fill in their information there so that they could get a quarantine letter to present to the school when they were to return. And that is no longer going to happen for K-12 schools. So we will have to be doing, we will be accepting letters from their physicians. We will also be accepting excuses from their parent. The other thing that is there is the TDOH document, which is the one that I just gave you all, the updated one, and that will be fluid with changes that come. It will automatically change on the website. And then we have a document for frequently asked questions, which we'll get to in just a minute. Now to number 6. This is an added one that I have put in there that says students will all face in the same direction in the classroom setting with as much space as possible between students. Seating charts will be maintained in classrooms. The flow of foot traffic in the building will be directed in only one direction where possible, and attempts will be made to minimize hall traffic at all times. Mask and hand sanitizer stations will be available in every school. We will also limit large group activities during the school day. Did you have a question, Mr. Arson?
Would it be appropriate or would it be good to put something at the very start of that, kind of like what's in number 7, at the direction of the director of schools? Because if you choose to stop this or change this at some point in the future, we'll have to go back and do this whole thing again unless we put this at your direction. So I'd actually like to put a statement at the front of that leaves it up to you.
And I'm okay with putting that in here if that is the what the board would want me to do. And certainly when I present this to you all and recommend it, you all could interject that via your motion.
Thank you.
Thank you. Number 7, what I've interjected there is unless otherwise directed by the director of schools, and that is whether students are eating in the cafeteria or possibly eating lunch in their own classrooms. Number 8, I've interjected here that we may need to change menus at the last minute due to staffing and or I need to put an or there. Distributors experiencing shortages of some food, but will do so ensuring an appropriate meal is served. And we have encountered that last year, so it could go either way there. So I did want to make sure I had that in there. Going to page 3, at the the closing paragraph, I say it is important to note that community school health conditions can change quickly and require the school district to make a variety of modifications to these guidelines, which may include isolating a grade level at an individual school or bus route due to staffing issues or high rates of student isolations or quarantines. Additionally, we may limit visitors in our schools during the day as directed by the director of schools. Again, I've asked for that to be in this document in hopes that, and I'll go back to the attendance data that I presented to you this evening. I would like to be able to say, at this particular school, we're experiencing high levels of illness, and I would like to say that we're going to isolate fourth grade for 2 days, 4 days.
Define isolate. Does that mean stay
That-
home?
That would mean stay home.
Okay,
Yes,
that's,
yes. Knowing that,
well, that's what I want, that's what I wanted, that's what I was trying to make sure that,
my objective is that students be in school for face-to-face learning. But I recognize there are times when that may have to have some intervention. I have put that in there. I don't have any problem communicating with the chairman if that's how the board would want me to do that, and I can put in there by the executive committee if you would prefer that, rather than just the director of schools.
I think we just need it to be you.
Okay, well, and I appreciate the confidence and the trust, but if that is something that you would want to change, then certainly, I would consider that moving forward.
I know it's not in here, but would we provide packets for the kids that we're isolating, just like we do now for those in quarantine? Is that the plan?
Yes, and that is actually in our frequently asked questions, which is the next document you have. I've also talked to our principals about making our devices available, hotspots available. Most of our schools have, in some cases, already issued devices to students to have. But we did talk about that, and I'm just gonna ask you if you'll just turn the page, and the next page, and it's the document that's the frequently asked questions. If you look at number 2, it states, if a student is unable to attend school due to being directed to quarantine or isolate, instructional materials and coursework will be available to them via the Schoology or Google Classroom platforms. We have 2, and what I've found is some schools are using one or the other, so we're going to continue that through this year until we can get on the same page. We didn't want to try to change anything in the midst of what we're dealing with. Students will continue to access the appropriate learning platform using their login credentials. If a student is absent due to illness but has not been directed to quarantine or isolate, they will follow the make-up work procedures outlined in our Students' Rights and Responsibilities Handbook. Here, and we've had discussion last week with our principals, and what we have seen is that we feel the need to provide our younger students, our K through 3, Kathy, our K through 3 students with the paper packets, K through 2.
Yeah.
We will continue to do the K through 2 paper packets and make every effort that we can to either deliver or have those picked up. We're hoping that we have more short-term absences than we do long-term. We know from what happened last year that a student being on a device for a long period of time did not work. And it's unfortunate. It worked for very few. For the most part, it didn't work for most of our students. So our goal is to have students in the classroom and encourage and do everything we can to have them there. But yes, we will provide paper and devices to those who need them.
Now,
As far as the devices go, last year we were getting close to a 1-for-1. And we had a lot of computers ordered that weren't getting here and things. So is that something we'll look towards in the future as far as going back to the 1-to-1? So if a kid's absent, they still have their laptop or their Google Chrome or whatever?
We do have Chromebooks. We do have enough for every student. What we have run into is as we collected those Chromebooks at the end of last year, we got a lot of Chromebooks back, but we didn't get all the chargers back. So we certainly have a challenge with acquiring chargers now for those Chromebooks. So even though we have the needed number of devices, we do have to, we are in the waiting game for some chargers.
Okay.
We have 2 different kinds of Chromebooks, so there's 2 different kinds of chargers, and but we're trying to get there. But and then we always have situations where we're more than willing to provide paper. Our teachers are posting their work daily, and they're available if possible. That meaning that they're not out or ill themselves to assist. I'll take a moment here to recognize our staff, our principals, our teachers, and Mr. Robinson, you had a question for me earlier in the week about our staff, and certainly what I would say is they continue to every day go above and beyond, cover classrooms when others are not there. Our principals are working tirelessly when we have a bus route that doesn't get covered and we're having to run 2 buses. They're staying, they're getting there early to receive students early. So just know that, and they're doing all this without any expectation other than they're there to take care of our students. So I want everyone to know they're doing an out.
It sounded like I was talking bad about them.
No, I
never
didn't.
spoke bad about the teachers and the staff.
Oh, I didn't mean that.
Yeah,
No.
That's kind of how I took that. And I
Okay.
didn't do that.
I'm sorry. Let me clarify that.
Question on this, when they're in quarantine, if they got their Chromebooks or anything, is the teachers able to do any kind of live meets with them to go over, or are they just on their own?
Okay, let me back up. First of all, when I said that, I wanted to say that Mr. Robinson was making a comment taken up for our teachers and staff. He was recognizing what they were doing, so I apologize if that came across differently, because it wasn't meant that way, because Mr. Robinson was applauding them and saying that we don't need to be evaluating them for reasons beyond their control, and certainly not anything I want to do, so I want to make sure that's right. The second part is doing the live meets, and that's, I'm glad you asked that question, because at this time, the governor in his, and the State Board of Education have said that we are not to do any remote learning. So, as a result of that, you're asking, could a teacher post a lesson for students who are out? Yes, we could do that. But to say that we were going to go remote as a school or as a district, we're not allowed to do that this year.
I guess I'm not asking to go remote. I'm saying if these kids are in quarantine, and I mean, is there a certain time that they could actually get on the computer and have a session with the teacher with help that they need? I get the state saying we can't do this and that, but we've done stuff before. To me, this is about our kids. This would be, and I hate to even for the teachers, but I mean, if one of them could jump on like a 3rd grade teacher for 30 minutes each day and split it up through the week just to help our kids out that's at home. You know, I mean, that's a lot to ask for kids to sit at home for 10, 20 days and never get any instructions, but you got lessons on a computer, or you got paper that you gotta look at, and you gotta figure out yourself. That's gonna hurt our kids when they come back to school, so, or is our teachers gonna have to start all over with them, or we just gonna hope they catch up to the other kids that's been in the class?
I would respond by that by saying we have had conversations this week about how we can address posting lessons on our websites or on their Google Classrooms. We're still trying to figure that piece out. Not that it's, not, some people would say, well, that's easy to do. Not always. In some situations, and I'll give you an example of Holston 4th grade, we have 5 teachers and all 5 teachers are out. So yes, we're looking at other alternatives. We talked about using our instructional coaches to post some lessons. We've also looked at having them as being resources as well as others. So I hope that we will have some clarity on that next week, and we'll be able to begin doing some additional, put some additional tools on those classroom websites.
Under health and safety, one question that I don't see here, but I've been getting from teachers both electronically and in person, is the consideration for perhaps reinstituting COVID days for teachers that have to be quarantined. So has there been any consideration of that?
That has not come from this office at this point. That was a federal mandate last year, and that's how that came about. There were X number of days, and I'm going to ask Ms. Buckles to provide information at this point in regard to that. She's pretty well versed in that piece. Ms. Buckles?
So I would also, if you don't mind, add, we have asked all the schools to post the planning period of teachers on their website so that students at our home will know when their teacher's on planning, so they can hopefully reach out and contact that teacher during their planning period.
That was why I was, during their plan,
Right.
Just one teacher do it one day and another one do it the next, just so we can at least help them out a little.
So we have asked schools to post that so that parents and children can at least know when their teacher's on planning.
Okay, thank you.
As far as the FFCRA days, that was the federal mandate that if someone was out due to COVID or they had to be home for childcare because their child was quarantined or isolated because of COVID, that expired December 31st. The federal mandate did. Our board, last year you all opted to continue that into the second semester so that those who were unfortunately sick in the second semester but not in the first had equal opportunity, and that expired by your all's mandate, whatever the last day of school was last year, May 23rd or whatever that last day was last year.
Did we get we got federal money for that for the first semester, didn't we?
No, sir, we didn't really get any, to my knowledge, we didn't.
It was all local money.
We just had to cover it.
Do we know what it cost us last year?
For some reason in my mind, and I don't, it's a jumbled up mess up there, but I have in my mind $85,000 is what we paid. Now, that could be a totally random number that's not related, but for some reason, that's what is in my mind right now is $85,000. We did do that to try to see if we could get some CARES money for reimbursement, and we looked at that to see what the cost was. I can pull it, but off the top of my head, it's $85,000.
I trust your head better than mine, so.
I have a question about the statement that the Department of Education is not allowing remote learning. I'm confused because I'm reading statements from the Department of Education that says a local school district has the option to take a class, a grade, or a whole school online if they so choose, but it can't be district-wide. Is that not the guidance?
That guidance, and I know exactly where you're reading from, Mr. Spivey. In our call yesterday, Commissioner Swin, her exact words were, "You cannot pivot to remote learning." If I go back to the April 12th, 2021 Tennessee State Board of Education, their final reading on item 3B, what that says, and I'll go to paragraph 3, This permanent rule establishes a pathway for LEAs and public charter schools to maintain CLPs, which are continuous learning plans, for the purpose of addressing disruptions to traditional school operations in the 21-22 school year and beyond, in response to a governor-declared state of emergency. There is not a state of emergency that has been declared by the governor that involves the Department of Education. And that is the clarity that I was given on that yesterday. But yesterday afternoon, after the press conference at 4:30, when Governor Lee made the statement that there would be no remote learning, later on, Commissioner Swin made the statement that yes, you could, by individual grade or school, but not as a district. I can't find that, and I'm not sure. There's a lot of confusion about those two statements yesterday. So when we did our research yesterday, if you'll look at the April 12th, 2021 State Board of Education ruling, it does say in response to a governor declared state of emergency. I've gone back, I have the last three executive orders from the governor, number 82, 83, and 84. They are all for the Department of Health and related in that area, except for the 182, which is the opt out of the mask. At this point, I could not find that. And that is certainly not what she said on the call yesterday morning. And there were several sitting in this room who was on the call with me when she made the statement, you cannot pivot to remote learning.
I guess my understanding of that summary, and I appreciate that information, is that even though the commissioner of the state education said that you can use it on a grade level or a class or a whole school, but not district-wide, your understanding from reading the actual rules and doing the research is there's a precondition to that the governor has to declare a state of emergency. So actually her statement, if that's what she said, which it's reported everywhere and it's probably recorded, is false without a state of emergency. Is that your understanding?
My understanding is after going into that yesterday afternoon, I felt like I had clarity on what was permissible and what wasn't. After that, I felt confused, as did many other superintendents who were responding to the listserv and trying to figure out what we can and we can't do. I wish I could tell you exactly. Those are the documents that we were able to pull. If I go by what was said, and actually that was pulled from the Tennessean, and I don't know if that's where you're reading it from or not, but I found it in the Tennessean last night, is where she made that statement about individual, that she didn't mean that a school or an individual class couldn't. She was talking about you as a district. So I apologize for not having a clear 100% answer, but we worked on this yesterday afternoon, several of us, and this was where we were when I was preparing your documents, or the documents for today.
And I'm sorry, I'm not trying to beat a dead horse. I want to make sure I understand, because, well, is your understanding that we can do that, or that there has to be a state of emergency declared by the governor first?
My understanding is there has to be a state of emergency as per the State Board of Education, and the document is dated April 12th, 2021.
Yeah, item 3B, I got it.
And if I'm wrong, I will stand to be corrected, and I'm trying to find out, and I've asked others for.
Oh, I don't blame you. I mean,
I'm asking others for additional information, and
when you get a different directive every day and our own state departments don't know what they're doing with each other at the press conferences, I don't know how they expect to issue statewide mandates and then not let us deal with our local problems.
we've also been instructed that if we do close school, we'll be using our stockpile days. So that's another consideration in all of this.
Yeah, I mean, I just think it's really important that we talk about these things because I know that you know that and our staff, part of them does, at least our central office, but the public needs to understand that too. I mean, there are people that need to be talked to about this because I don't know if anybody thinks this is working, but it's not been working. We're supposed to find solutions.
I did also read in that same article that there was a legislator who actually is going to propose to give school districts 10 remote learning days, which even confused me further.
There's many confusing things from our legislature about this whole, I mean, when they
So-
threaten to take away your school dollars, you know, and to go to vouchers, which is a whole plan to kill public education, you know, need to put the politics aside and focus on our communities and our kids.
If you get a chance, go back and read that Tennessee and Tennessee.com. I think that Governor Lee's summary yesterday.
Where I got that from was not the Tennessean, that's reported widely,
Right.
you know, that's what the Commissioner of Education said, and I'm just trying to get down to the root, because this is how there's so much misinformation is we can't just take a statement at face value anymore, even from our leaders, because, you know, they change their mind every day.
Can I go back and clarify, because I did have a wrong number, a very, very wrong number. I believe the 85,000 is what it cost us in substitutes to cover for that FFCRA leave. At the end of 2020, we had to put a figure on every W-2 of what they got as a benefit for the FFCRA leave. And we had 372 people who took advantage of that FFCRA leave, and it was $322,738 is what it cost us to provide that. Now, that was just for 2020. You went ahead and extended that on until the end of this last school year, so that, it'll be much more than that, but that's what it cost us in 2020 alone.
So I just basically
You
first.
say that number again, please.
$322,000.
So,
And how many employees, 327?
372.
372.
so that was basically for one semester, so you could almost double it, most likely?
Pretty much, yes.
Okay.
And there's no reimbursement from anyone for any of that money, right?
Correct.
Okay,
And you could, as far as time period, you could double it, but our number of cases were much more extreme in that next semester where you allow them to extend. We were in the pretty much thick of things. If you remember, that's when the state pretty much shut down and all activities were closed. So I would say that number would be more for the second semester.
When you prepared the budget for this year, did you allow for the possibility in any way that that would happen? We can't, can we?
I did not allow for that.
We did not. We did our substitute pay.
going back to something that was said just a few moments ago, if we close school for COVID, we have to take one of the, what do we have, 10 days this year?
Yes, stockpile days.
Stockpile days. And that needs to be understood by the public, that anytime that we close this year, it's totally different than what it was last year. Because I've been asked the question by several people, why can't we just close for 2 or 3 days this year? And if we do, we're basically losing what we would call snow days, bank days, and I think that's an important fact. And we should, as Matthew said, I think base our decisions on facts and not necessarily on opinions or on editorials or anything else of that nature. We need I appreciate all the facts that Evelyn has given us tonight with the figures on attendance and the figures on the cases. And right now, those are just facts that we need to use as we make our decisions on all the different issues before us. One thing that's I would like to clarify or maybe change where you're talking about isolating a grade level. I personally think that you need the authority to isolate an entire school if things get really bad at a particular school without having to have a call board meeting to close a school for 2 or 3 days because we can't get substitutes or things of that nature. I don't know if anyone else feels that way or not, but,
What number are you on, Mr. Jones?
I can't remember.
Last page right here.
It's,
I told you not to mess with the papers.
wherever she put that word
I
isolate.
got you. I've done-
Did you find it?
Well, we had that problem last year when we didn't have enough
It's,
people in the cafeteria.
it's not
Yes.
a number, it's on the last page.
I got it.
It is,
So
it's,
we had the cafeteria.
Does anyone else have a comment on that?
I agree.
I just,
That's a good idea.
And I had one clarification, going back about 30 minutes ago. Did I hear you say that there was quarantines coming from 3 sources, health department, physicians, and self-quarantine? Is that correct? And was that for students and teachers, or just students?
it could be from all.
Could be for both?
I mean, for both, yes.
Okay.
another statistic that we do not have and cannot get right now is the number of students that are in quarantine. And personally, I think the number of students in quarantine is a more important figure than the number of students who have tested positive as far as education is concerned. I mean, we can deal with the kids who have tested positive and get their work to them. But if we have 15 kids who are quarantined because of one positive case, we can end up with a huge attendance problem. And I don't know how we find a way of tracking that, but rather than find a way of tracking it, how can we reduce the number of students that are in quarantine is the question that I have of, the self-quarantine. Sometimes they want to self-quarantine. Other times, somebody else wants them quarantined. So how do we reduce the number of students that we have in quarantine? And how do we reduce the number of staff that we have in quarantine? Right now, if a staff member is vaccinated, they do not have to quarantine. Am I correct on that?
You are correct.
And so how do we reduce the number of staff members who actually get quarantined? I'm getting emails all the time from parents who say, my child is quarantined because his brother was with someone who was tested positive. And I don't know that that's really doesn't fit the tracking mechanism, does it? But that was a self-quarantine.
Well, I had a question along those lines. What, the people that are self-quarantining, for someone who's self-quarantining, could we have people that self-quarantine that maybe have been vaccinated, that think that they have to be vaccinated? I mean, that think that they have to be quarantined?
I think we probably do have some.
I think so too.
We've made this document widely accessible to our staff, students, and families, so they have this guidance, and they know. I do think this guidance is the way it's written. If you're vaccinated, you follow this. If you're unvaccinated, you follow this. And then there's the quarantine exception. So I do think it's a document that's easy to follow.
Let me expand upon that question. Does somebody have the option to self-quarantine if they've been vaccinated? Is it saying that you can, or it's your option, or that you don't have the option anymore to self-quarantine? That's the way I read it. That's the way I think.
Right.
I think that goes back to probably a parental choice too, but I think that,
I meant for a teacher or employee.
Oh, for-
or
okay, I'm sorry.
Employee.
right.
That's where I was thinking.
And we don't have a record of who's been vaccinated or not as far as employees. I mean, that's, would violate the HIPAA or
So somebody could say they're quarantined and they could have been vaccinated. We don't know.
right.
No,
Okay.
it's a trust. All right, the last document I gave you was the frequently asked questions. This is a document we put together in hopes of trying to respond to questions that we thought would be frequent. I think we've covered quite a bit here. We've covered our instructional options, health and safety. We've also included a tab for mental wellness and food and nutrition. And again, on this document, what I would add is the piece as far as eating in the cafeteria. I would add on number 2 under food and nutrition that unless otherwise directed by the director of schools. those are the documents I have for you this evening as far as our work session goes. I would ask that we take maybe a 10-minute break, and then we come back for the called board meeting, if that is is all right with the board. And when we come back for the board meeting, we will have a session for public comment, and then I will be recommending to the board the additional operational procedures as it pertains to the health and wellness of staff with the additions and deletions that I've made this evening. So, Mr. Jones?
But before you take the break, think about the meeting next week, the agenda. If you want to move that meeting to a later date in September it's a small agenda next week, just think about that, and we can make a decision during the call meeting if you want to do that. I'm not proposing we do it, I just want to throw it out there as a, pardon?
There's not nothing left on there after we do the.
Well, I mean, it's other than Chris Lazier, and I'm sure we could get Chris to come at another time, I would hope. But think about that. It's not much on the agenda as far as we could roll it into October, or we could put it later in September so we can have another update on the COVID numbers or things of that nature. Plus, we may need to have another call meeting if something else, if things keep going. But think about that during the 10-minute break that we have.